Welcome to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilsson. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey, David Nilsson here, and I'm the host of this show. Here I connect with leaders from around the world who have a borderless mindset and can share ideas and innovations, best practices, things that can be applied to both life and business, ultimately helping us to continue to lead and grow in a rapidly changing world. Now, this episode is brought to you by Doxa Talent. Doxa Talent helps businesses to source full-time, highly dedicated workers from all over the world. And as a result, their companies can scale faster, increase margin, and improve culture. The most common roles that they help fill are things like virtual assistants, finance professionals, sales and service, and software engineers. To learn more about Doxa, you can go to doxatalent.com. Okay, now for today's guest. James Wong is the co-founder and CEO of Vibrant Cities, which is a multifamily real estate development firm in Seattle, Washington, creating some of the most, I would say, community-driven and livable and leading-edge buildings in the greater Seattle and Portland areas. He's responsible for everything from the evaluation of the investments they make to the acquisition, the development, the funding, even the bank relationships. James is a seasoned entrepreneur and a founder of many successful companies. And as a sought-after thought leader and speaker and writer on both real estate and technology and entrepreneurship, James has been an active investor and property manager for the past 20 years. And he's acquired almost $1 billion in real estate projects. And I say almost, it's 800 million, but I'm going to round it up because it's such a freaking impressive number that I wanted to do that. So James, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I want to dig into real estate. Clearly you have a lot going on right now, but before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about you in the early years, how you got started. Because people don't just jump into building hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate on their own. So help our listeners understand a little bit about your background and sort of how you got there.
Well, I'm an immigrant. I was born in China and I came to America at the age of 8. People ask, well, why did you come? I was born in 72. And so I just had my big 5-0 this past week. So it's a big milestone. It was very tough and grueling getting up to it. Getting a 5 in front of the name is in front of my, age is a very, very tough thing. But now that I'm here to embrace it and looking for an awesome decade. But so, when I left China at 8, we left because we had no food, really. For my birthdays, not talking about birthdays, for my birthdays, on the day of my birthday in China, my mom would give me 1 red egg to celebrate. And before we go and, eat that egg, mom would go, hey, go around the neighborhood and show everyone you have 1 round egg. It was like, not to brag. It's kind of interesting concept, right? It's not to brag, but to have people celebrate with you that you actually have an egg to eat on your birthday. And so that's kind of the humble beginnings, of where I came from. And so came to America when I was 8. My mom worked as a seamstress. My dad worked in Chinese restaurants. So your typical Chinese American immigrant story. We lived in the projects, lived on food stamps. Maybe a quick story about that is when we first moved to Seattle, my parents didn't have jobs. And I had one young sister with me as well. And so we moved on top of this church. Okay, it was kind of an ugly, rundown building. There was a small church on it. There's a small abandoned store next to it. And then there were 3 small apartments on top. And we lived in one of those apartments. And on Fridays and Sundays, we're told not to run around the house. You know why?
Church.
Yeah, they were having church service on the bottom, right? We learned very quickly, don't do that. So this building was literally across the street from my elementary school. All I had to do to go home was just walk across the street. But instead of doing that, I walked around the block, went through the alley, and went through the back because I didn't want my friends to see that I lived there. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, at 10 years old, I felt a lot of shame living in that ugly, rundown building on top of a church. And so, that I think that carried with me. And when we would take the bus from our apartment to Chinatown to visit my dad and buy groceries for the family, I would crossing from Beacon Hill into Chinatown, we would see downtown Seattle and Capitol Hill. And I said to myself, and these are beautiful buildings. And I said to myself, someday I'm going to be able to afford to live in these places. Someday I'm going to freaking own them. And I'm going to go build and own apartment buildings that kids don't have to feel ashamed of living in. And so that's actually the mission statement of our company. We build vibrant, smart communities that people feel proud to call home. I think amazing. That's driven me all the way from 10 years old to today.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful story. And by the way, I appreciate that. I mean, oftentimes when I do these interviews, I ask people to give me the 5%, right? Tell me not just the story, but tell me the real story behind it. So I appreciate you sharing both the story and the emotions behind it. So, connect the dots for me. At what point from, here you are, this 10-year-old child who's saying, I want to someday create these homes for people so that they can feel proud to live in them. There's a very personal connection there. But in between there, like, when did you first identify with being an entrepreneur? And what was that moment that made you think like, no, I can actually do this?
So I didn't know I could do this, but, I come from China and Guangzhou. And I think, back then, when I was growing up, they said, whether you worked or not, because it was a communist country, you made $36. So there was a lot of, very, you wouldn't think about it that way, but there were a lot of very unmotivated people, because whether you worked or not, you got paid $36. And so there were a lot of side hustles that actually happened on the side because, and so I think it came from the side hustles is, growing extra vegetables so that you can sell it, right? Making extra, tires. My grandmother sold on the side to make money for the family, right? And so I think these side hustles, this entrepreneurial gene, I think I just grew up with. And so having grown up with not a lot of money, and I get, when I grew up, my parents argued a lot. Now, I love my parents, but my dad, he was, a very, blaming man, and he had a lot of ambitions. I think that was lost, and he would blame my mom for a lot of things. And guess what? He would, they would argue about money.
Of course.
Right? And so for me, being an entrepreneur and getting money was a way to solve problems. So even when I got married, having grown up in America, I said I'm Chinese. I was born in China. My first language is Chinese, but my better language is English. Right. But, even having grown up with all that, I told my wife, hey, honey, we can argue about anything, but let's not argue about money. So, in my career, I've had money and I've had no money, right? Okay. And, near bankruptcy, like most entrepreneurs, never bankrupted a company. Okay. Thank God. Okay. But we were close, multiple times, right, with several companies. But thank goodness we've never had to argue about money with my wife and I. And so that's just.
How did you do that, though? I mean, it is something that is a real stress for most families, right? And as you said a minute ago, you guys have had your ups and downs financially. So how did you avoid that in those moments?
I think that's a great question. I think my wife is a super, super supportive wife. Being the wife of an entrepreneur is not easy. Okay. And as an entrepreneur, our emotions go up and down with our sales. Is that accurate? Right? When we close a big deal, it's a high. We lose a customer, it's a low. Okay, it goes up and down.
I know nothing about that.
So I think we both didn't come from nothing. We both didn't come from much, and so I've always had a nice fallback. And what gave me confidence to go and, swing for the fences, right? And go build I always knew that if I actually ever failed, I would have places to live. Like I could always go move in with mom or move in with my sister or my aunts and uncles, right? Okay. Worrying about food or clothing, that was never a concern. And so I knew there was always a fallback. So it's almost, like God saying, go and, conquer the world, right? With confidence.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think having a clear understanding of your options if things don't go well does sort of alleviate some of that stress. By the way, I will just say it resonates for me. I've never said this out loud, but it makes sense that, being an entrepreneur is hard. Being the spouse of an entrepreneur is even harder. So I totally appreciate that.
That's right.
Tell me how you got into real estate. So I know you've had a successful career as a tech entrepreneur and you've invested in many other different types of businesses, but tell me about how you ended up in real estate. What was that process like?
Okay, great question. So I built my first tech company a year after working for one of the large firms. I studied accounting in business school, and then I went to work for one of the large big six at that time, and I went to work in New York City, and it was great and glamorous job. But then it was during the .com days. And so then, I was allured, and we did some pretty innovative stuff inside that big firm. And so I said, I was able to, I got paid when I started that job, I got paid $36,000 salary. Okay. I got paid twice a month, and half of that one paycheck was not enough to pay for my rent. I needed a little bit extra money on the other paycheck to pay for my rent. Okay, and so, but I didn't struggle. We went clubbing and spent a lot of money on beer and stuff. But so what I did was we were working inside that large company. It was Arthur Andersen, and I was able to get like $500,000 worth of business from Arthur Andersen for Arthur Andersen. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. But we went and talked to this big bank. We talked to the partners that we're tech guys in it. Hey, this is how you outshine yourself. We're tech guys in a financial services industry. Okay, I knew a little bit about tech growing up. So we went to the partner and said, hey, there's a different way to analyze this deal. Would you like to, do it? He goes, I don't know what the hell you're doing, but it's working well. And we're able to connect people in New York, London, and Tokyo real time instead of FedExing information. We were creating essentially the first extranet when that name didn't even exist. Okay. Yeah. And so we created that, and they said, hey, that's really innovative. Why don't you bring this out? Why don't we ask our customers if they want this, right? And they said, we don't know what the hell you're doing, but you go do it, okay? And we were able to bring in $500,000. Now, remember, I got paid $36,000, and we brought in $500,000. We're like, man, my partner and my colleague and I at that point, we were like, holy crap, we know the math on that one, okay? So then we came out to try to do it on our own. But what we found out was that this is actually interesting, it wasn't us that closed that $500,000 business. It was the brand of Arthur Andersen that closed that business. Mm-hmm. And so, it took us a long time to learn that truth, right? Okay. But we came out, struggled really hard for 6 months, and then found our customer. Our actually first customer was Arthur Andersen. They hired us back as consultants, and we got paid more than, triple what we got paid, but that's a different story.
Still worked out.
Yeah. So we came out, started our own business. It was during the .com days, worked super hard. Like I said, if I know what I know now, I was young, dumb, and broke. If I know what I know now, I would never have started that business. But we didn't know. We thought we were going to be the next Arthur Andersen, Accenture, and we worked our butts off. And we actually, 24-year-old, and my partner was 23. We both came for Arthur Andersen, and we built a multi-million-dollar business. And then we got acquired 5 years later, almost 5 years later. It was during the .com days. I didn't even know you could sell companies back then. Okay, all I did was just kept working. But we sold it. And, it was kind of in what Chinese call our first pot of gold. So we were able to sell the business. And with that, I became a pretty active angel investor. And so I invested in tech companies. With tech companies, you either make a lot of money or lose everything, nothing in between. Yeah. So to balance that risk out, I started investing in real estate because that was the risk. So I started with single family homes, and I even was a property manager myself. So I rented it out, I fixed things, and I was told to buy almost rundown homes, fix them up so that you can create the value yourself, and so I kind of did that. And soon enough, I, own a, dozen homes, and then start getting into apartment buildings, developing homes and investing with other people, and went into apartments. And here I am today, 14, 15 years later.
That's amazing. I love the fact that you left Arthur Andersen to start a business, and your first client ended up being Arthur Andersen, and they paid you 3x. That's amazing. So, James, you guys are doing some pretty amazing things. I'd love to understand, how do you differentiate in the market today? Like when you think about vibrant cities and the things that you guys are building and you're doing, what is unique about your model?
Sure. So I think what it gets to the concept of borderless, right? I grew up in Asia. Grew up in China and then came to the US, but I traveled back to Asia a lot, and I have investors from Asia. Because I think affinity plays a big part of things, right? We have investors in every one of our projects. Most of them are Asian Americans, okay, with similar to me. Grew up in America, made some money. Now they want to invest in real estate, and so. But I also have investors in Asia. So with the Asian background and thinking, Americans love big apartments, okay, but what won't change around the world is great locations. A lot of people say, "Oh, real estate, you can buy land. You should buy land because they're not making any more." They said that's why real estate is valuable. That's actually that's not true. Okay, what's true is the right land has value. You can drive, even in a big, global city like Seattle, right? You can drive an hour away and you can buy land super, super cheap. They'll probably never be valuable. But the right land is worth, 10,000 times more, right? And so what's true around the world is great locations are key, but size is a cultural thing. And so what we've done is we've created smaller apartments in urban areas and also created smaller retails. I also lived in New York, right? You don't need 2,000 square foot retail to be successful. If you got 1,000 square foot or even 800 square foot, I think we've all been to the New York delis or the Chinese takeout store, which isn't big, but they make a nice living from it. And they said that, most retailers, especially restaurateurs, if the rent is somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000 or $6,000, they always survive. It's when it's like 10, 15, 20,000 that it's too much of a burden for them. And so that's kind of our thinking of, hey, where do we take from, what's culturally, Asian or, other high density areas, even in Europe, right? Okay. Yeah. And then take it to the big box American and actually go and create great communities design, with it.
That's fascinating. I've never really thought about it that way. But, when I travel to Europe, I'm always a little bit surprised by how small even the nice places are and how the amenities are even a little bit different, right? More understated in some places. It's funny when you go to New York, you're right. Again, smaller sizes. So as you get into these higher density, more sort of developed areas, they start to maximize space more and more and more. And so you're on the leading edge of that in the Seattle area. That's right. It sounds like. Very cool.
I think, people are, and our thesis is always, we build some of the nice micro apartments, nice as, what we call their CDUs, small efficiency dwelling units. And our thesis is that we give people half the space for 2/3 the rent. 2/3 the rent, they're saving $400 or $500 a month. That's very meaningful. When I was, right out of college, young, $400 or $500 a month is a lot of money. Yeah. And they're willing to give up great space because they're not there that much anyways, right? Okay. They're out, hang out with friends and, doing work and other stuff. So.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I think there's also culturally something shifting with the younger demographics too, right? They're valuing more community and proximity more so than space, right? I remember the baby boomers, my parents still haven't moved out of their 5,000 square foot home and there's only 2 people there, right? That's a generational thing. All right, so let's talk about some of the journey along the way. I love that you came out of the gate sharing some more authentic components of your childhood. Tell me a little bit about the challenges that you've encountered along the way as you've been trying to build vibrant cities.
So, look, I'm an entrepreneur and I have so many arrows behind my back, right? I made all kinds of mistakes. So I would say that how I got it. So I was learning from a mentor about real estate development. I was in Rotary. So I said, I tell people, you are who you hang around with. Right. Mm-hmm. And so when I found out that my mentor, his name was Jim, he was in real estate development investment, which at that time I was a tech guy. I wanted to hang around with him. Okay.
Yeah.
And so then he says, well, you want to hang around and learn about real estate? No problem. Come join me. I have a running group on Saturday mornings. Okay. And afterwards, then we go and, have breakfast and hang out together. Okay. And we meet at 7 a.m. Okay. So I'll tell you, I hate waking up early on Saturdays and I hate running. Okay. But because I wanted to hang out and get to know these guys, right, I went and did it. And I actually ran 2 half marathons, and I'm very proud of myself. And it was good. But that's what you do, right? You want to learn, you go hang out with people. And so I learned from him. And over a 14-year period, I started investing with him. He was a very generous man. And I spent time following him on, spent the days with him and went to meetings with him. And so he was very generous with his time. And then I invested with him. I helped him raise money. I learned how to structure deals, right? And so I always tell people, look, you don't have to do everything on your own. Go learn, right? Go learn from people that have done it. It will save you a lot of time and money. And so that was kind of one of the things that I did, That's awesome. And I also believe, having come from tech and real estate, tech is an innovation game. The smarter people win, okay? And, you fast, speed, all that kind of stuff, right? Real estate is a wisdom game. I think the more wisdom you have in real estate, it's a longevity game. You actually make more money and actually have, better results that way.
Very cool. Let's go back to challenges though, James. We just went through two years of a pandemic. We're now sitting with inflation. It's a real thing. How have these things affected your business? And what are you doing, if anything, to sort of protect yourself, your business, your people?
Yeah. Real estate, there's a lot of nuances. Okay. So the challenges wise, I'm a good financier, but I didn't know the nitty gritties of construction in terms of design, getting it built, getting it, all the architects and consultants, engineering involved, right? It literally takes 10,000 decisions made right to get a building from the ground up to something there. Okay? Maybe even more than 10,000. Okay. So I didn't know a lot of that. What I knew was the numbers, the finance size. Excel always, you can always make a deal work through Excel. We joke about that in business plans. Okay? And so Excel is one thing, right? Okay. And so when I first got into the business, I was like, what is this contingency? Why do you need a 5% contingency? If everybody agreed to it, the architects already drawn the plan. Okay. The GC already got it priced. Okay. And the engineers told you what it takes to get it built. Why do you need this 5% contingency? Well, one thing I've learned is that, okay, plans will never be perfect. There's always something that comes up wrong. Okay. And that 5% contingency, you need it. Okay. No. And so now we just went through 2 years of COVID, right? Okay. This is unprecedented time. Okay. And so one of the challenges, we've invested in the urban core in Seattle and Portland, Pacific Northwest. Okay. Well, guess what happened and it was in the history of the world kind of that no one moves out of the urban core when bad things happen, right? They always come from the outside in, right? Well, during the COVID, all the reasons of living in the urban core, no one wanted to. So I was like, holy crap, right? Our real estate values went down, rents went down, right? And we're like, holy crap, that sucked. Okay. Second, we had a lot of projects under construction. We had 4 projects under construction over $200 million. Okay. So it was taking much longer to build. Mm-hmm. Costs are rising because, one week is no steel, another week, no lumber, another week, no joists, right? You're like, what the hell, right? Okay. Also, my values are going down, costs are going up, delays are getting longer. I'm telling you, January 2001, I'm not usually a pretty optimistic person, but I was at my end. I mean, I felt so much pressure. Costs were going up. And, I built up a nice, decent net worth. But man, my cash flow was getting drained, okay, because things are taking longer. And I was in pain. And I was like, it was probably one of the toughest times of my career. And so I was like, how much longer is this going to last? I need the market to come back. And thank God, man, that and the first half. And so, but guess what? I didn't feel like there were mornings I didn't feel like waking up, going to do things. But I've been doing this entrepreneurial thing for long enough where you go, yeah, I know I don't feel like waking up, but I get the hell up anyways and go move forward. And so we did that, and just every day went to work and solve the problems. They weren't fun problems; they were tough problems. But by middle of the year 2021, market was back. Rents were back up. We're getting buildings completed. People were moving back into the city. And so thank God, so, you have to deal with, we have to deal with cash flow issues, investor upsets, right? Okay. And city problems. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. Real estate development's not easy. I always say everyone thinks they can be a real estate developer until they try it. And then some of them, maybe they go bankrupt the first or two deals.
Well, it's funny. I just, during the pandemic, related story, certainly not on the same scale, my wife and I decided to start building a home for our family. And it was right before the pandemic started. And of course, the pandemic hit and we went through all the same things you did. It's like, one day you've got, they're putting in your foundation and then you're waiting 90 days for a framer because nobody's available. And then when the framers come, it's 20% more than they told you. So that contingency bucket was gone like halfway through the project. It can be really painful, right? So what I did learn too is that there's so many decisions to be made in just one home that I would never want to be a real estate developer. I'm a real estate investor instead. So maybe I'm a customer of yours someday. One thing else that you said that I think is relevant to the audience, and that is once you write a business plan, it's wrong, right? Like a spreadsheet can tell you anything you want it to, but until you actually get in there and get your hands dirty, you need to validate, one, you got product market fit, and two, that your assumptions are right before you ever start to really hit your wagon in any specific strategy. And so I think that's fair feedback. And it'll be interesting to see how the future of work changes. I mean, as you know, we're a fully remote operation. We've got people all over the world. Thankfully, when the pandemic hit, we didn't have to send people home, and now we're not having to call them back because we were already there. And now there's this tension in corporate America between, do I work in an office? Do I not? Do I call my people back? Do I not? So that's going to be an interesting shift. All right. I want to talk about
something. Can I add something to that from a borderless standpoint? It's really interesting to me that they said, look, development design is super important in getting people all together in the same room, right? Because you're dealing with so many different trades in development. And so it was very important. In some of our meetings, we had like 20 people in the same room talking, right? And so you needed that, felt like free flow. It was amazing to me that during the pandemic that we're able to do these creative sessions online.
Yeah.
And so that surprised and shocked us, right? And so now sometimes you're like, yeah, we still like do meetings, in person, right? Okay. But it's like, you know what? Sometimes let's just do it on Zoom, right? And it still works, right? So it's fascinating.
Totally works. It's fascinating too, because if this pandemic had happened 10 or 15 years ago, it literally would have stopped business almost across the board. But instead, we adapted. And what we always knew that the work from home or the remote sort of employee thing was coming. But I think the pandemic just accelerated the future, and now the future is today. So got a lot still we got to work through. James, I want to talk about something recently I saw as I was doing a little bit of research for this particular show. I saw that you welcomed a new addition to your team, and I saw the announcement on social media. It seems like you're pretty excited about that. Can you give a little bit of a overview to the group on who you just welcomed into the family at Vibrant Cities and why that's exciting for you?
Oh, thank you for asking about that. So when I was running tech companies, there was always a finite time to these tech companies, right? You build them, and then you grow them, you either IPO them or you sell them. And that's kind of, the life cycle, right? There's in tech. But in real estate, it's a multi-generational thinking. And so I'm proud to say that, my smart son, he's kind of smart. I don't know, he went to Harvard, I don't know, you heard of that school, but
once or twice.
Yeah, and he graduated from that, and he went into tech investing, and did all kinds of stuff in real estate. So he recently, 3 weeks ago, joined our company, and I think that's one of my most proudest moments as a entrepreneur and dad, that my smart son find it worthy, right? Find what I've created worthy of his life's devotion and dedication. So thank you for asking.
That's super cool. I think that's, entrepreneurs, like you said, always looking at this timetable. When am I selling? Right. And many entrepreneurs, I should create businesses that are more lifestyle related. They expect it to be generational, something they keep in the family. So I thought that was a really cool moment. And I could tell based on your post, you were really excited about that. All right, we're getting close to the end. I want to just, I guess, ask a couple more questions. So let's zoom out for just a second. I want to talk about just entrepreneurship in general. The whole concept of borderless is that we're going through a time where there's just this transformational change that is happening constantly. And I'm just curious, like, how do you stay on top of the trends in your industry, and how do you stay sharp as an entrepreneur to make sure that you're putting like today's best practices to work and continuing to evolve and grow?
Yeah. So I'm a believer of the more you learn, the more you earn. Mm-hmm. And so I always, just looking to grow and seek, okay. And, I did one of the, best learning I did was, at Harvard. Harvard has a program called OPM. It's kind of like, they don't have an executive MBA, but this is a program for business owners and presidents. And I highly encourage, your audience to look into that program. If they're a business owner and they run a great company and they want to learn, love it. It's like a 3-year program that I did. I'm also a participant in EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. And so I was past president and I helped on the board, but I wasn't really involved. I'm a lifer in EO. Okay. I love that organization. It's like my tribe of people. I get energy and learning from it. But I stopped being involved in leadership in EO on a local level for many years. And then I recently got into the global level of being the My EO real estate champion, which is trying to build a global group of like-minded real estate development investment people. And that's got my juices back going and learning from, other real estate people from around the world. And so again, I'm a believer you are who you hang around with. And the more successful real estate professionals, investors I hang around with, the more we can learn from each other. And so those are kind of the things,
that you're doing. And by the way, for those that are interested, EO is a peer-to-peer learning organization for entrepreneurs who want to learn and grow and learn from each other. Particularly, it's been set up in non-competitive industries. And so it's like what I think some people their head might be exploding right now is that you said you get together with people that are in your industry and share what you guys are doing. That seems a little bit counterintuitive. So can you share how that works?
Yeah, I think it's an evolution of EO. And, because I've been in part of there's 2 organizations that, I've been involved with that long, over 20 years, right? One's Rotary, where I give back and, we do philanthropy stuff around the world. And then there's EO. Okay. So one part fills my philanthropy. The other part fills my entrepreneurial zest and, thirst for learning. Right. And so EO started with non-competitive industries. And for me, that's great. But now that I know the EO culture, which is, about confidentiality, about safe, like you feel comfort with each other, I think the next step is, okay, I want to learn deeper into my industry. And so I think because we come from that EO culture of, trust and respect, we can take it to the next level of being in competitive industries. But we're creating forums where, the world is big, right? I don't believe in a zero-sum game. I believe in creating a bigger pie. And so we're all in different regions, globally. And so the more we learn about how to, build a better building faster, quicker, cheaper, okay, or how to, do a value add quicker, cheaper, faster, we're all helping each other. Where do we get sources of capital? Who do we talk to? How do we structure a deal, right? These are important points that we can learn from each other.
Yeah, and I think at its root, when I say borderless and we say the borderless mindset, that's a mindset of abundance, not scarcity, right? It's not about protecting what we have, but about creating opportunity that lifts up all people. So I love it. James, last question for you. What are you excited about today? Why is today such an amazing time?
So I think in the real estate industry, prior to the pandemic, we kept saying, hey, what inning are we? We've had, almost 10 years of great times. Okay. And when is this, song going to stop? Well, it felt like for us in the industry, the song stopped during COVID for a little bit. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people right now, rising interest rates, it's scary time, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I believe. We're still dealing with historically low interest rate. Yes, interest rates went up, but they went up from zero. Come on, guys, ladies and gentlemen, it went up from zero. So yes, interest rates are higher, but we're still dealing with historic low interest rate environment, and there's still massive demand for housing. Now, I can't say for certain markets, but definitely for the Northwest or maybe West Coast, it's an amazing market still. Okay. And so I'm a big believer that the good times are coming. Ride the cycle in the next 6 to 8 years. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Well, I love the positivity. Well, we've been with James Wong, the CEO of Vibrant Cities. James, where can people learn more about you and the work that you do?
Well, thanks for asking. You can go to vibrantcities.com. So Vibrant Cities with a plural. .com, and you can see the projects that we do. And I'm always looking for land to buy so that we can develop. So that's something that,
There's an entrepreneur for you. We're just about to close and he starts closing. I love it. James, thanks so much for bringing your thoughts, your insights, and sharing some of your positivity. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilsson. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.